Continue. But they saying they thinking that like at the end of the day, the day of the Lord is gonna be, it's gonna be devastation and death and whatnot, but it's gonna be a remnant preserved, you know what I mean? It's gonna be places destroyed, but it's gonna be what the Most High wants destroyed. You know what I mean? He says that His Spirit is gonna be in the missiles that get shot over here. You know what I mean? This place is gonna be destroyed in 1 hour. Scripture speaks on all this. That's why it's not a coincidence these people going and building underground bunkers. You know what I mean? It's just so deep. You know what I mean? Like we'll be, through the Spirit speaking on stuff, and then we a movie will come out, or it's a movie that actually is actually showing us exact scenario that we're speaking on. You know what I mean? Like movies like The Road and Mad Max. You know what I mean? I used to wonder why my father used to have me watch certain movies. Now that I think about it as I'm older, a lot of the movies had that theme of that chip. A certain type of tech, Salakia, certain type civilization. A certain type of society. You know what I mean? Like when you watch Star Trek, what do you think that is? That's a one world order. You know what I mean? Like, continue. The collapse of any great civilization often results in discontinued discontinuity in history, where knowledge becomes lost in the midst of time and progression, and stumbles and falters for a period. And that's truth to a certain extent, but at the same time, like I was just listening to that guy Kenneth Hovind, Hovind, it's something like that. He looks like an Edomite, but at the same time, some of those Edomites or Salakia, some of those men and women that appear like Edomites, that's like along the Bible Belt and whatnot, they aren't really Edomites. They're Israelites. That's why they, subscribe to the scripture so wholeheartedly. And that guy, I actually, before I got into the truth, I read some things about him. Like we speak on how you got Leviathan, you got Behemoth, you got creatures that even though you're gonna have the newly created creatures that Esau's tampering with, but that's all the will of the Most High. You got animals that that Esau said went extinct that probably ain't all extinct. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, he was going into about as far as so-called dinosaurs. You can catch him on YouTube, and the dude he actually he gets persecuted. You know what I mean? He got it. You have to go check him out on your own. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, I can sit up here and say it from my belief. I believe he's an Israelite. Just because some of the things he go through, and he's fervent about the scriptures. You know what I'm saying? Anyhow, my point being, he wanted to basically the dinosaurs or whatnot, but he was saying how I think that's the spirit too, because I believe, matter of fact, that was just that over the Passover. I just was watching his video like maybe today, well, yesterday, and then the Apostle Tahar and the elders and apostles did that Passover lesson, and they were speaking on how the Edomite. I wonder if they talking about him though. He was talking about how the Edomite was going in on how he was saying how because I don't think they actually named who they was talking about, but they were saying how he was going in on how technology basically like so many years like so basically now we're into the age of every 12 hours it's like a new scientific breakthrough. You know what I'm saying? So he was saying basically the guy Kenneth Hovind was saying how you had people at certain like Adam, certain people lived so many hundreds of years. So just imagine a man living that many years, plus with the knowledge that Most High, like with Adam, Most High gave him a certain amount of knowledge and all that, and then to the point where he was able to name all the animals and and whatnot. So and then living all those years, so, that was a way for the Most High to preserve knowledge. These Edomites are trying to preserve it through satellites and, all kinds of other shit, you know what I'm saying? Uh, the most commonly referred to example is that of the Dark Ages in the wake of the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. And that's so deep because, for the longest, I'm sure like a lot of brothers, before they learned the truth, I thought the Dark Ages was just what Esau said, the time when they didn't have actual, you know, um, you know, understanding of things like because we just it was a time we were lost and people didn't know how to do this and do that, but not knowing it was a time when we ruled, and it makes all the sense because you got to remember when you go into the history of Septimius Severus and all those when Jake actually took over Rome. It says in the wake of the collapse of the Western Roman Empire because Jake and them took that over. This narrative is slightly simplistic and also distinctively Eurocentric as learning and technological and social development continued in the Islamic and Chinese worlds, as well as within Europe itself during this supposed period of post-collapse stagnation. For this was nevertheless a time when a number of crucial advances were made. The invention of the heavy plow that revolutionized agriculture in the clay soils across northern Europe, the Tower windmill and the mechanical clock, for example, but the early Middle Ages undeniably witnessed a profound historical hiccup after this dissolution of the Roman Empire. There was also a much earlier widespread collapse of Bronze Age civilizations around the Eastern Mediterranean and an ensuing Dark Age from around 1100 BC. Likewise, many other civilizations and cultures around the world have undergone a rise and fall throughout history. The Maya, which were Israelites, the Olmecs, which were Israelites, the Rapa Nui. I'm not familiar with who that is, Rapa Nui, but civilization on Easter Island and the Indus Valley civilizations, to name but a few. And it would be arrogant. But who's to say that they just because that was just like because that's supposed to be the spirit. Because I was just listening to Apostle Ramlab. He was saying how he went into the history of the Nabateans because that's why they trying to say Esau and this and that and la da da because the Nabateans actually end up taking over that land of Mount Seir when Esau had actually migrated out of there. So which makes sense though, because you got to remember, especially when Jake fled, during 70 AD and all that. So, you know, but it's so many different parallels to history. You know what I mean? Because they done found Edomite skeletons in Egypt, and at one point in time, you did have Egypt. I mean, Salakia Edomites in Egypt. The Ptolemy dynasty and all that. I remember I told the Edomite that he looked because he tried to make a fucking he tried to basically cut me by sitting up there saying, "Oh yeah, and that's why Julius Caesar was fucking Cleopatra." And I was like, "Yeah, he was fucking that little nasty white bitch." You know what I mean? But I remember I was in because it was a Jake, the piece of shit nigga. Well, I can say he was a piece of shit, but he's a two third. He's a nigga basically. And he knew something. He was like, history says how Cleopatra wasn't very cute, but she was charismatic. She actually had sex appeal. She was one of the first females to wear makeup. But then when you go through the scriptures, makeup isn't really a good thing. You know what I mean? A lot of women, they said you could tell the countenance of a woman by her eyes, and a lot of women wore makeup around their eyes that showed when they wore all that makeup on their eyes that showed the signs of a harlot. Just like when a woman would wear lipstick. A lipstick was, that red lipstick was to actually, what's the word? To signify, what else, like some women lips are, red out there. So, you know, it's deep. History is fascinating. That's why I understand when the brother gets all pumped up and animated about it. You know what I mean? Getting into our history and the history that's been hidden from us. I ain't mean to digress. For this was nevertheless a time when a number of crucial advances were made. Oh, Salaki, I read all that. Civilization Eastern is from 1100 BC. Likewise, many of other civilizations and cultures are. Oh, I read all that. Slovakia. We arrogant to assume that Slovakia, our own current industrialized civilization is somehow immune to sudden collapse and that it will continue indefinitely. In fact, anthropologists such as Tanter argue that as societies become more complex and interlinked like our own, they actually become more vulnerable to sudden catastrophic collapse. Global global catastrophic risk. Civilizations collapse for a variety of reasons, from war and invasion, natural disasters, overexploitation, and degradation of their natural environment. Hazards that they may threaten our own modern worldwide civilization in the near future are known as global catastrophic risks. This range from the distinctively plausible pandemics to the unlikely asteroid impact or even the utterly impossible zombies. So let us take a closer look at the five realistic possibilities here. Now, this is bullshit. I mean, it's truth to it to a certain extent because the scriptures tell you what's going to really devastate this place and other places. But, that's going to be them nuclear missiles, them nuclear warheads, those arrows, you know what I mean? Them broken arrows, if you want to call them broken arrows. You know what I mean? But my point is the nuclear, them ICBMs, put it like that. Now, don't get me wrong. The Most High can, send judgment through because he is everything. You know what I'm saying? So he can send judgment through, the thunderstorms, these different storms, and you know, how he's doing all that judgment through that fires, that's happening in California. It's amazing to me because people are really just really. If I mean, it'd be so clear to the brothers or brethren on the Akim, like we be sitting back and like, I mean, I did multiple videos on the floods. I mean, they just had another flood recently. You know what I mean? Like you had at one point, like it reminded me of that scripture. I think it's the second Exodus where it was talking about you on one side you had the fire, or the one side you had water, and it just made me think. You got this going on. You got fire happening on the west coast, and then you had a whole bunch of floods happening on the east coast and down south. So I'm like, damn. And then what I mean, like I'm in West, so I'm in Ohio. So I'm like, I was thinking the fire on one hand, you got the fire on the one hand, you got the water. How he said it's like you walking through on a straight path. You know what I mean? And it just don't try. I mean, take this thing seriously and don't fuck up. That's what I was thinking. You know what I mean? But the Most High could judge through all things. He is in everything. But it says in Scripture he's gonna judge this place with the missile. Uh, but for the sake of edification, because you never know what he said in these books. That's why I tend to read out of them. I'm gonna continue. It says subtitle: Climate Change. This may well be the most likely trigger for the toppling of our modern world, which I told you. It's going. The scriptures talk about those nuclear, those ICBMs. We know that climate change is already happening, and that is our own. That it is our own activities that are driving it. Carbon dioxide and methane emissions from our industry, transportation, and agriculture. Not only will the average global temperature continue to increase, along with a rise in sea levels from thermal expansion of the water and the melting of the ice caps, and and acidification of the oceans from dissolving of all that extra CO2, but there will also be severe changes in regional climates. Global warming will cause shifts in the distribution of where rain falls, leading to increased floods in some areas and droughts in others, both of which will seriously challenge productive agriculture, particularly the amount of food we can grow to feed our rapidly multiplying human population. Notwithstanding that, and when you have these places that, the whole purpose of them doing the harp and whatnot, because they're saying that certain places are not getting enough rain. So with that, you fucking up the weather even more because, like I said, we're going into it should be on springtime. We pass Like I think spring is supposed to be around like the 21st or something like that. And I swear it was just like, what day was that? Today is the 25th. That might have been like I want to say that was Friday. Yeah, that's the 22nd. I want to say it was snowing that day. You know what I mean? Like it just was recently snowing. Yeah, matter of fact, it was Friday. It was Friday because I had to go to the lawyer. So yeah, it was Friday. It was snowing. So um, Salakia, bear with me. Going to feed our rapidly multiplying human populations. Access to reliable sources of fresh water could soon become major flashpoints of geopolitical tension, just as much as crude oil and other valuable natural resources. And the eruption of the first water wars may not lie that far in our future. Which I could see something like that too, because these people done fucked all this water up. Now you gotta buy water. You know what I mean? I know brothers don't drink no water except for, water they're buying. And it's, water expensive, you know what I'm saying? Making exact predictions among Salakia, making exact predictions about the rate of climate change and local effects is extremely difficult with such a complex system as the Earth's atmosphere, oceans and land masses, and all the feedback loops this involves. One particular concern is the large amount of methane gas currently trapped in permafrost and on the ocean floor. Methane is around 25 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, and if it were to be released, it could unleash a very sudden warming. The risk is that climate change could occur so rapidly that our infrastructure proves unable to adapt and modern civilization collapses. I'm going to stop there. Lord will, I can start up tomorrow. It's another subtitle: Asteroids and Compact Salakia, Asteroids and Comet Impacts. So with that, I want to give all praise, honor, glory, dominion, and power to Call Halal, Yahweh by Hashem, Yahweh Shah, by Hashem, Rachak, Wadash Rakatah, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and salutations to the Akim around the four corners of the earth, pushing the truth with faith and sincerity, risking their lives and the freedom to do so. Shalom to the Akwat and the Akim out there listening and learning. Shalom to the sincere brethren and the hopeful elect. Shalom to the confusion of faith brethren, join into our ranks, as well as those that we're hoping to join into our ranks. And shalom to all those believers. Stay up, stay strong. Adawan Ratazah. I'm able to finish this series and come back at you with more lessons as soon as possible. Until next time, shalom, shalom, and abad babal.